come to the Spirit, the three in one. I come to the water, just as I am, oh God, make me new once again. I've traveled. Well, good morning. Welcome to Fridays with Francis. If you happen to have been trying to locate me somewhere on the internet last week, you didn't find me. It was just one of those weeks where we just weren't able to get everything done. And so I apologize for not having it up and running last week. And some of you have even asked about if I was okay, because you tried to find our live streaming from our services on Sunday, and that didn't work either. We had a computer glitch on that day, and so that's sort of the way it runs sometimes. You know, one thing leads to another. So I apologize for all of that, but thank you for following me and for tuning in on Fridays with Francis. And I appreciate the opportunity to hear from some of you this week over all of that. What I wanted to talk to you today about has to do with how we go through phases and stages of life. You know, when we were young and we looked down the road into the future, the future just never seemed like it could come quickly enough. It was always slow moving. We always wanted to see the next year. When we were in school, it was like, am I ever going to be out of school? Am I ever going to graduate? Am I ever going to get a job? Am I ever going to start my own career? Am I ever going to have a family? And then you look back across your life, and sure enough, you realize how prophetic your parents were. No, I didn't say pathetic. I said prophetic. How they would say, don't wish away your life. Don't keep hoping that the future will hurry up and come. Believe me, it'll get here soon enough. And we look back across the years now, and we certainly see it that way. But the great benefit of that is that we can look back across time and we can see all the things that have happened, and we remember those moments. You know, those moments when we were going through a great difficulty and we said, how am I ever going to get through this? As a pastor, I've had opportunity to sit with person after person over the years who have gone through one crisis or another, and the question is usually pretty much the same. I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And when we get up to the other side of the crisis, we're able to look back and we can see the grace of God and God's mighty hand at work in our lives, bringing us through those moments, giving us strength in the midst of those times. One of those incidences in our lives was when I was in my last semester in seminary. I decided that I wanted to go ahead and carry a heavier load than normal so I could go ahead and graduate in 3 years instead of 4. And back in those days, it was a possibility, and so I did that. I took 18 hours that semester. I was pastoring 3 churches. My wife and I had 3 small children, and we were trying our best to make it on a student pastor salary, and kept pushing ahead into the future. Well, right after we got started in that last semester, found out that my wife was going to have a very serious back operation, and so she had to go through that, and we had those 3 small children, and you know, we didn't have Zoom in those days. So I had to drive 150 miles round trip to seminary each day, and so we couldn't have the kids, the younger kids there. My parents took them and kept them for several weeks while um, some of our parishioners helped us out with our oldest child. And bit by bit, although we asked the question, how are we going to get through this? Bit by bit, we came through it. And we found out that when we got to the other side of the crisis, God had already provided everything that we needed. He provided the resources, He provided the people, He provided um, schedules worked out. It was really miraculous, and that's a good word for it. And so, looking back through our tough times, even the toughest of times, there are those moments when we can see the hand of God at work. It is, as it were, a demonstration of God's prevenient grace. How God is preparing for us before we ever know we need God. God is there, and He has prepared the way for us. There's a beautiful example of that in the scriptures, many good examples, but one in particular I want to share with you this evening, and it comes from it comes from the 5th chapter of Joshua. Now, remember where we are in the context of this passage. The children of Israel have been led out of Egypt. Moses has now died and passed the torch on to Joshua. They've crossed the Jordan River at flood stage when God parted the waters. They walked over on dry land, and they finally get into the promised land. They've been looking for the promised land for 40 years. And even before that, the stories were told of the promised land. You remember how God came to Abram and said, I'm going to make you a great and mighty nation. I'm going to give you a land in which to put that nation so that all the nations of the world may be blessed by you. And so the story was told again and again and again. And generation after generation remembered the promises, the patriarchal promises that God made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And finally, the children of Israel have made it across the Jordan River, and they have entered the promised land. Now, they've been eating manna for years, decades, because they didn't have any food in the wilderness, and God sent them manna, which was bread from heaven. It would show up on when they awakened in the morning. The manna was there, and they just went out and ate the manna. And there's an interesting passage in the 5th chapter of Joshua, in which Joshua instructs the people that they are to go into the land, and they observe Passover for the first time in the promised land. Can you imagine what that would have been like? It would be like sitting at the table with Jesus as He breaks the bread of the Passover, and they were celebrating the Passover in the promised land. And then in the midst of all of that, we're told that that was the last day that the manna fell. The people ate no more manna after that day in the promised land. And in my mind, I can just imagine them saying, the morning they walk out, for the first time in decades, they walk out, there's no manna. And they say, well, where's the manna? You know, at some stages through their journey, they complained about the manna. They said it was miserable food. But where's the manna? For the first time in decades, we come out looking for the manna, and it's not here. It wasn't there because God had finally brought them to a place where they were surrounded, as the scripture says, by a land that was flowing in milk and honey. God gave them all of the resources that they needed, even before they knew they needed it. What a lesson it is for us. We have a tendency to look in the moments of the present and wonder how we're going to make it because the manna has stopped. But God has provided for us all that we need. All that we have to do is reach out and receive it. I'm just wondering on this Lenten morning, how is it with you? Is there a crisis or a question that you face, and you wonder how in the world you're going to make it? Well, trust me that God has provided a way for us. He does not abandon us. He promises us that He will be with us always, even to the end of the age. And God has provided everything that we need if we just reach out and receive it. My prayer for you on this day is that you will receive the grace of God, and that you'll discover fresh new dimensions of the life He's called you to. Because long before you got to the place where you are, God was preparing for you, and He made the resources to be in the right place at the right time. I remember many years ago, a pastor that my wife had, when I would be dating her, we'd go to church at her church, and every night that he would pray, each Sunday night that he would pray, he would have in his prayer this phrase, God, we know that you're never late, you're never early, you're always right on time. Well, that is the way God operates. And so my prayer for you is that you'll discover the way in which God is right on time with everything you need. Well, I look forward to being with you again next week for Fridays with Francis. Until then, go in peace and go with God.
I come to the Father, I come to the Son, I come to the Spirit, the three in one. I come to the water, just as I am, oh God, make me new once again. I've traveled so far from family and home, from the God who knows me as one of God's own. By baptism waters, I've stood before the Lord. Oh God, won't you cleanse me once more?